righty. Okay. So today we have a lovely Adam Brooks here in an interview with me. I asked Adam to come and have a chat with me because I met Adam about 3.5 years ago at an event that he was moderating and I was a guest speaker at. And we've intermittently kept in touch since then. But fundamentally, although Adam works in a slightly different industry, he runs his own business with sales, and I'm more around the confidence side. What started to become very clear is that there was a lot of overlap with self-development. And we've intermittently stayed in touch for the last 3.5 years. And we just decided it would be a really good idea to have a chat around boundaries because it seemed to keep coming up with types of content we were sharing and the conversations we were having. So that's my intro of how we met. Adam, why don't you introduce yourself and tell me a bit more about what you do?
Cool. Fab. Thank you, Angie. Yeah. And first off, before we go into me, yeah, you're bang on. The synergies, because we deal with human beings, right? That's the key thing, is we're dealing with human beings. And what I love about your content and what I loved about you since the day I met you is you pick on the, you don't allow people to kind of get away with stuff, right? You pick on the behavior, you challenge it, you call it out, and that's what I've been doing for years because people, there's a lot of white noise in the world, right?
Yeah,
so I love the fact that you are prepared to share really useful information about psychology, about behavior, about patterns, about habits and disciplines, but it's done in such a simple kind of poke that you're calling
prod. And to be fair, I think that's why I gravitated to you, because whenever you do your content, whether it be on LinkedIn, Facebook, interviews, whatever, you're very unapologetically you, and you're shameless, and you're just like, look, this is Adam. Like me or piss off, basically. Like, you're very like, this is who I am. And I've always liked that. And I always gravitate to people like that because literally when I've met you in the flesh, when I've done Zoom calls with you, when we've spoken online, you're exactly the same. There's no wool, there's no fakeness. It's just like what you see is what you get. And I always enjoy that type of energy from somebody.
Fab. Thank you, mate. And that is the greatest compliment anyone could pay me, right? Other than being a good dad, So so I am Adam Brooks. I run Sales Academy, which is a business coaching and sales training firm. Accountability is absolutely key in everything we do. So we give education away for free abundantly because education is great, but knowledge you can get everywhere. It's about what we do with that knowledge. So our business model is all about implementation and coaching and accountability to actually achieve some stuff rather than just theorize about that shit all day. My other business is a digital media agency, which is across the globe now, which I love. And we've got a team of experts that come in and do it. And we do a lot of the strategy with businesses in terms of how do they get their message out there and stuff. And you mentioned that about unapologetically me. I love the fact you brought that up because I despise the word authentic because it's been overused. It's like the word entrepreneur. It makes me cringe these days because people go, oh yeah, I like to be authentic. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And you go, I don't know. I've said something intelligent. Leave me alone. No. What do you mean by that? Don't just come at me with bullshit bingo. And I'm like, because I've always felt I am living unapologetically me, but that didn't really, if I can share a truth with you, a personal story, I wet the bed till I was 15. Okay. So, and I mean, seriously wet the bed. Like I was NASA's baby for bedwetting. Right.
Wow.
And so I was sleeping on electric blankets every night, which is kind of crazy when you're wetting them and it's plugged into the mains. So the things they used to do to us back in the 80s, right? But at 14,
health and safety wasn't the creme de la creme thing to do, eh?
It seriously wasn't. It's like we'll have to talk off air about some of the things that they got me to do. It's crazy. It's like it's a form of torture, I swear to God. But I was like 14 when having so many things not worked. That we were sat there with the doctor trying something else with my mum, and this young junior doctor just said, have you ever tried talking to somebody professionally? And we were like, what do you mean? And this was like an observing doctor. And he said, like psychiatry, have we tried psychiatry yet? Had never heard of it at 14. So me and my mum, we had 3 appointments with a psychiatrist. And what we discovered was I was bullied by my headmaster at primary school all the way through, not by my friends, not by my peers, by my elders, my superiors, my people in authority. And every single day made to stand on a chair because I was too small, so he couldn't see me and stuff like this. Like, so I was mentally bullied by my headmaster. And then when I went to secondary school, that kind of carried on with my form tutor.
Wow.
And then, so at 14, after going through those sessions, I turned 15 by the end of them. And I stood up to my form tutor and I just felt a pop in I can't explain it, Angie, other than in my head, I felt a pop. And it was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing this. I'm not having this. And I started to pack up my stuff, and I was leaving the class. And he's like, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm done. I'm just done with this," quite politely. And I was going. And I remember him saying, like, "If you leave, you're never welcome back." And I was like, "Is that just for maths, or is that IT and tutor and other things you take me for?" And so I spent the last year and a bit on the three-legged table in the corridor. And I learned more in that time than I did in 15 years. But I stopped pissing the bed overnight. Wow. And that, yeah, for me, that was like, how? Do you know what I mean? So I got fascinated with psychology at 15 and started to read about all the great philosophers and all that sort of stuff, and really started to immerse myself in it. And then books became my education, and I just live and breathe reading books. So I'm extremely well read, and I consider that to be my education, not what I got academically, because I'm not an academic person. But at 20, the kind of shift was from 15 to 20. At 15, I was like, no one is ever going to make me feel that way again. And at 20, I realized, actually, that's not true. I will never allow anyone to make me feel that way again. And it was at 20 that I chose to start to live my life unapologetically. And that doesn't mean I don't care. It doesn't mean I don't empathize. It doesn't mean that I'm a stone. It means I'm actually completely and utterly prepared to go balls deep, butt naked, and make mistakes and keep living and keep learning and keep growing. And in our industry, because I think our industries are combined, there are too many knobheads who believe that they know more than everyone else. And they have that I am greater than you attitude and approach. And that's what I say. That's what, yeah, it's almost a disease of our industry. And it's like, yeah, you have to keep learning and keep growing, but that doesn't make you better than anybody else. Do you know what I mean? Because you can theorize about this shit all day long. It's what are you going to do with it? So
yeah, that's the key thing. And it's something that came up in even my coaching call yesterday. It's like, there's one thing to understand a lot of this stuff, but what do you actually do to implement it? How are you actually doing it? That's why so many people read books, and because the book resonates with them, they feel good at the end of it. So they go, that book was brilliant. But very few people make life-changing, I mean, some people do, but on the whole, most people read a book and they don't make life-changing moves from it, because they're not actually implementing what they've actually read from within the book. And also, when you read a book, it's a one-stop shop for millions of people. So how they interpret it will be slightly different from one person reading it to the next. So the implementation is absolutely key. Now, one thing that I try and do, and I know you do as well, is that to try and live by these things. That doesn't mean I get it right. Like sometimes I completely balls up and I say the wrong thing, or I regret something, or I think, oh my God, I wasn't actually in integrity there. Wasn't intentional, but I've dropped the ball on that one. I need to fix it or whatever. But fundamentally, it's about being as present as you possibly can, to be aware of who you're being on a day-to-day basis in order to be that person, not just talk about that person. And so many people have the gift of the gob, and there's other people that have the gift of the gob, but they're actually doing it as well. And they're the people that I tend to be most attracted to, just in terms of like their energy and to be in their company and to speak to, and et cetera, et cetera. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%, mate. You said earlier, we met on stage, right? And the amount of times I come off stage and I do a training workshop, like I said, I do hundreds of training workshops for free, because the education isn't valued like it used to be, because we've got access to it all the time. But it's what we do with that information, which is why I said our model is all about implementation, right? But I come off the stage and people come up to you, and it's a little bit of that starlight thing going on, because you've been on stage and all that stuff. And when you first get on public speaking doing that, it's nice. But after a while, and people come up and they go, "Oh, that was amazing. That was brilliant. Thank you." And I go, "Okay, cool. Thank you for the compliment. But listen, give me one thing you're going to do differently based on what you've just learned." And they're like, "You are?" And I was like, "Well, the compliment's lovely. You're not here to blow smoke up my ass, right? You've just invested 3 hours of your time learning something. So as lovely it is for you to come and chat to me and go, that was lovely. What are you going to do differently from what you've learned today? Because if you're not going to take anything away, I may as well not do this anymore."
Sure. No, I hear you.
And they're not ready for it. They're not ready for that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember years ago, I was on stage with a mate of mine called Steve, and I always talk about it like a depression weekend, and it wasn't, but it was dealing with mental health, depression. And I'm talking years ago, right? And Steve did a very provocative take on behaviors and psychology and habits around people holding themselves in this place. And he came off stage and it was mind blowing, right? And it was proper. You could hear the murmurs in the room because everyone was like, "Oh, this is wrong. This is so controversial." Like, I loved him to bits. And he came off, and I was going towards him to give him a big hug. And this woman came brushing past me, and she was just started like verbally attacking him. She was like, I fundamentally disagree with everything that you've just said on stage. Blah, blah, and she's attacking layers. And Steve just went like this, calm as anything. He went, hi, I'm Steve. and this bit, Ange, it'll even shock you, right? She smacked his hand away. She physically smacked his hand away and carried on berating him, right? And she said, I have been clinically depressed for 23 years. And she's poking and pointing and this. And he just turned around and went, oh, congratulations. And she was like, I beg your pardon? Congratulations. Have you got any idea the level of focus and discipline it takes to hold yourself in that space for 23 years? He said, I work with Olympic athletes and they're not that focused. So congratulations, you know? And this, you could just see this, the whole of this woman's life. She just discovered it was a lie. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
So yeah, in terms of implementation, what we do with it, it's absolutely vital. And you're right, we gravitate to people that like similar things. And I've had the pleasure in my life and the privilege in my life to be trained by some of the greatest people on the planet. I've been part of some really good organizations that have enabled that to happen. And I'm extremely blessed. In the same time, I've been trained by some of the biggest pilots on the planet as well. So, you know, you take what you want from these things and you do what you want with them. And it's like, in our industry, we're kind of peddling information, but it's what we do with that information that matters. Mm-hmm. There's two books yesterday I was talking about, both by Adam Grant, right? The originals and his latest book, Humankind. And they're incredible books. Now, there's a brilliant part in like Humankind where he talks about don't punch Nazis. And I can't tell you any more about it because you have to go and read the book, right? Because it's such a controversial kind of subject. But the point and the principles about what he's talking about how humans behave is epic.
Sure.
Absolutely epic.
It's really interesting that you just mentioned depression there, because I'm not a depression specialist. And if anybody's watching this, I'm not here to say I know more than other people about depression. I definitely do not. And I know that depression is a broad subject. Some people, I mean, there's some arguments to say it's genetic. There's other arguments to say hormonal. There's other things. And you might have been something through you might have been through something very, very traumatic, like, you know, severe bereavement or traumatic events that's happened to you. I'm not taking those away from people, but the people that I've met that are just generally depressed with no real kind of specific thing that's happened, they just don't enjoy life. In my experience, it's those people that are not living by their values. And I would be happy to sit in a room and debate that with people who feel that they're just happen to be depressed and it's just who they are. And I've never been disproved that people that are depressed and live by the values, but versus people that are not depressed and living by the values, like he's always kind of got that the wrong way around, but you know what I'm saying? It's like people that aren't living by the values are more likely to feel depression. And living by your values is a nice segue back to boundaries, because very often there's a huge overlap between being boundary based. What does boundaries actually look like? Living by your values, what do they look like? And living by those things. Now, I think a lot of people have the misconception that living by your boundaries means that it gives you permission to be an arsehole. And it's not. It's not about bossing other people around. It's not about demanding things from other people. And I'd like to get into a bit more detail around that and hear your thoughts too. Yeah. But I have an interpretation of what boundaries means, but I'm just going to spin it over to you. What's your interpretation of boundaries?
It's an amazing subject, which is why I wanted to come on and have this conversation with you, apart from the fact I love hanging out with you. And that. So, no, genuinely, I think there are three types of behavior. If people are listening to this or watching this, get a pen and paper, right? I think there are three types of behavior. There's aggression, and there's submission, and then right in the middle, there's assertion. So if you put aggression at the top, submission underneath, and then assertion in the middle, right? Assertive. Yep. And I look at most of my childhood, my friends, my growing up, my experience as a 46-year-old human being, right? I can pinpoint so many reference points in my life where I can pinpoint aggression in me and in others. I've seen it, I've felt it, I've been on the receiving end, I've been on the delivering end. Submission all the time, right? From the standing in the queue in Tesco's on my phone, not noticing someone walking in the queue in front of me, right? They do it once, or somebody pushes in the traffic, they do it once, you let them, and then suddenly 2 or 3 people do it, and you're like, what, am I invisible? So you go from submissive to straight to aggressive. Mm-hmm. So we've got so many reference points to both of those types of behavior. But I sit down with adults and I go, so what does being assertive actually mean to you? What does it look like? How does that show up in your life?
Yep.
They haven't got a frigging clue.
Yeah.
And that's where I think boundaries begin for me, in terms of when you start looking at value codes and habits and principles and what are important to us, assertion isn't something about stamping your feet. It's knowing what's important to you. So my personal coach worked with me on the difference in life between accommodate and compromise. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, this was a biggie for me, Angie, and a personal thing for me, because there were some of my behaviors that I was doing, which was actually creating the life that I was having, but my ego wouldn't allow me to accept it. Right. Mm-hmm. Sound familiar? We all go mm-hmm. there, right?
Yeah.
So I was creating these things, and she kept challenging me on this accommodating. And I sat down, I went through it for about 3 months, actually, kind of deep work for it. And I now realize that for me, because you hear all the time, like life is about compromise, relationships are about compromise and all that sort of stuff. You can't have a perfect thing. There's always things you've got to compromise on. And I'm like, okay, well, I now understand for me what the difference is. Because in a relationship and things like, if my partner has an annoying habit, right? Can I accommodate that? Yeah, because I love them. And then I think about it and go, how many other people get that close to them to know that they have this annoying habit, right? So it might be an annoying habit, but it's also a gift. I can accommodate that. But if my partner turned around and said, I hate this type of person, or I hate this, and they harbor that level of hate, for me to be with that person, it would compromise my values as a human being. And that means I would have to change to be in that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a perfect example for me of boundaries and knowing the differences between things.
Sure.
And understanding what they mean to me and what the importance are, the level of importance are to any human being, yourself first. And it's not a selfish thing, but it's understanding that, you know, every single person, like my map of the territory isn't the territory, it's just mine. Mm-hmm. So other people are going to have lots of different variations on it. But if I don't stand for anything, I fall for everything.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's also, for me, my interpretation is if you're being, I call it passive aggressive, not passive aggressive. I mean, passive or aggressive or assertive. So if somebody is being passive, what they're doing is respecting the other person and disrespecting themselves. If they're being aggressive, what they're doing is disrespecting the other person and, to a degree, disrespecting themselves. If you're being assertive, you respect the other person and you respect yourself. It's not about dominance. It's about actually, you've got needs and I have needs too. You matter, but I matter too. And that's where I think the fundamental difference comes in. But I also think what you've just said and touched on, which I think is really valuable, is where that line stops and starts around what a boundary actually looks like. So I've had people say, for example, when we, I don't know, stack the shelves, I like it that the bowls go on the left and the plates go on the right or something. And my wife doesn't do that. So, you know, I've told her and she keeps on doing it the wrong way around. So she's crossing a boundary. I'm like, let's just redefine what actually boundary means. Because to me, if it's actually level disrespect, where what she was doing was then having an impact on your personal life, then that would be crossing a boundary. I mean, is it that they're telling you can't go out? Is it that they're cheating on you? Is it they're doing things that actually cause, like, is it that they're coming back at 3 a.m. and turning all the lights on and putting music on when you're trying to sleep? That's disrespect. But where do you draw the line between that just pisses me off and that's actually a boundary, but that one isn't? And sometimes if you're not familiar with boundaries, it's very hard to try and educate people and help people understand actually this is when your personal boundaries are being crossed, and how you stack a shelf isn't actually a personal boundary. It's just a preference of how you'd like something to be done. And what, you know, can you tolerate something, or is it actually crossing a boundary? And understanding that can be quite difficult if you've never really been introduced to boundaries from a younger age. Yeah.
And I totally agree. It comes back to this whole self-development piece, which isn't buzzword. It's about introspective reflection. It's about all that sort of stuff, right? And it's working on ourselves. I believe that everyone has this power to help themselves and serve themselves and others. But at times we need to heal, and we don't take the time to heal. And that healing isn't always a healing from a trauma. Sometimes that healing is just from programming that doesn't suit us anymore. So my mum and dad's attitude to life, I love them. My dad's dead now. I love my mum and dad to bits, but their approach to life is very, very different to mine. And that's okay. But if you go back to boundaries, we were taught probably the number one boundary we were taught really, really young is right or wrong. But right or wrong from whose perspective is what we don't question, right? Exactly. So what is quite a sad, and I read this in one of the books on psychology years ago, and it, you know, when you read something and you put the book down, you go, I need to lie down and let that one sink in, because that's quite a hard thing to take on, right? And it was that at the age of 2, we are trained by conditioning by our parents that love is conditional,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was like, hang on, at 2, and the book went on to say, it's like from the moment you were born till you were 2 years of age, you are literally in a happy, nurturing place, and everything is sensory overload and everything. But then when you get to that age of 2, and you start to be able to push back because you don't like the food that's being put in front of you, or you don't want to put that coat on, or you don't want to be in the pram, or you
Terrible
don't want to be in
twos.
Yeah. At the age of 2, we start to push back. And as soon as we push back and go, no, because we learn the word no. And as soon as we learn the word no, and we say that to our parents, now we see a different side to our parents because we're disobeying them.
Interesting.
So that early imprint of what right and wrong is really based on that early parenting and what their definition of right and wrong is. But who's to say that that's the universal law of right and wrong, right?
So write something down so I don't forget to put it in later. Carry on.
Yeah, sure. So I think this is where the healing comes back in, is because do people actually genuinely look at their past and go, right, what are the parts I need to heal from? What are the parts that I'm still carrying with me? Because if you think 0 to 7 is our forming years, and then 7 to 14 is our affirming years, effectively, by the age of 14, our values, our identities and things like that, they're effectively fixed unless we do anything about them. But we knew bugger all at 14. So all of those fixed values and identities are other people's shit imprinted onto us.
Absolutely.
So we've inherited this nonsense, right?
Yeah.
So if we don't go down this self-development, introspective self, then we are literally carrying around decisions that we're making in our lives that could affect our money, our relationships, our work, our own parenting, based on stuff that goes back to the 50s. My mum and dad both grew up with a ration book in place post-war, right? So if you think about the identity that they had about money and scarcity and food and scarcity.
I have this debate all the time. I'm so glad you've yes, absolutely.
So they're literally coming into that space. So then they're teaching us things like money doesn't grow on trees. And, if you don't get down from the table, until you've eaten all your food and stuff, there are starving kids in Africa. There's a Band-Aid. Right?
I know that.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, so what kind of impact is that having on us? And then you go to, my mum's like, go to school, get good grades, get a pension, get a job for life. And I'm like, Mum, that doesn't work anymore because there's no such thing as a job for life because that doesn't exist. And they've screwed our pensions up. So that advice is bad advice. That sits in the realm of good and bad, right?
Yeah, sure. It's very, very interesting. It's the way that people, we are living on other people's rule books. But in their defense, they're living on other people's rule books and they're living on other people's rule books. And we're just a small cog in a massive machine that is just feeding down this chain. And we're just part of that chain. But it's that willingness to stop and go, hold on a minute, whose rules am I actually living by? And I have such a firm belief around this. Like, whose belief is this? Whose rule is this? Why am I doing this now, even though there's so much evidence out there that will suggest it probably isn't the right thing to do, just because I believe that I should do? Who said that? And sometimes I can't even answer it. It's just been ingrained. But then you spend time with other people that maybe you're close to or significant people in your upbringing, and you think, there it is. That's where it is. I've picked it up from that and I've carried it on and I've carried on living it. But
I'll give you a classic one, right? I'll give you a classic one. My parents, I don't know if yours, because we're similar ages, right? Respect your elders. Right.
Okay.
I was taught when I was younger to respect my elders. Now it's an interesting one because living unapologetically, as we said earlier, making mistakes and stuff like that. Like, I don't intend to offend anyone, but it does happen. But I'm big enough and ugly enough to go, okay, cool, I own that one. Let's talk it through. Educate me. Help me understand why you were offended by something that came out of my mouth. Help me understand. Teach me, right? I don't want to remain ignorant, but I don't intentionally offend. But respect my elders, I disagreed with. Now, if you go back to what I told you earlier about my issues with authority, you understand where they come from based on the authority figures that I had that bullied me to the point that I was afraid to get up in the morning and afraid to wake up, which is why I never woke up and why I was wet in the bed and stuff, right? So respect your elders. I'm like, no, because I know a lot of elders who are total bellends.
Carry on. I love that.
So why does respect automatically come with age?
Okay, let me interject just a little bit. I think this is where the key thing around boundaries and respect comes in, because you can respect somebody But if somebody is, quote you, a complete bellend, then what they're effectively doing is not being respectful towards you. Now, that doesn't give them permission to disrespect you in an unbounded way just because they're an older person. So I think I agree with what you're saying. It's like everybody deserves respect. Yes, respect your elders. Yes, some of them have fought in the war for us and blah, blah, blah. And I respect that. But if they're going to be a bellend to me, I'm not going to stand there and take their punches just because they're an elderly person. They don't work from a different rule book than my best mate who's 41 years old speaks to me, like it's the same principle, it's the same rule book, but I do have respect for the fact that they're older. Maybe I'll be more patient with somebody older because they can't drive as easily or they can't walk as easily, those types of things. 100%. Like I've got to be empathic to maybe some physical things that they have different, or maybe their memory or whatever, but that doesn't give them permission to treat us disrespectfully, and therefore that's a boundary base. So this comes back to exactly the whole point of this conversation. Where does the boundary stop and start? So have another example of where I think people get it mixed up. So just kind of, it's similar, but moving it aside a little bit. Take an example of something like money, or even drinking and badly behaved drinking or whatever. They'll be exactly the same in terms of the principle. So say, for example, you've got a friend who can't manage money at all. Like they just can't. And then for whatever reason, they're always skint. Now, if that's the way that they want to live their life, that's up to them. If you're going to judge them on that, it's not actually implying a boundary, it's judgment. You're projecting judgment. You're shaming that person for who they are in the way that they do it. Now, when it becomes a boundary issue is if that person can't manage money and then they keep coming to you, can you lend me more money? That's when it has a personal impact on you. It's like, hold on, this is your issue. I'm not judging you about it, but you've made it my issue because you keep coming to me for money. Yeah. Same with drinking and people getting, I don't know, like difficult kind of behavior. If they want to go out and somebody wants to go out and just get smashed and acts like a dick and acts like a bellend, as you say, I love that phrase, acts like a bellend and gets kicked out of nightclubs or whatever, that's to do with them. I don't care. I'm not here to judge you. That's your life. But if I'm with them and then I'm getting kicked out because I happen to be in their company because of their behavior, now that's a boundary issue for me because my night is being ruined because of your behavior. So to me, that it becomes a very clear line with where the boundary stops and starts. If somebody wants to be rude, that's up to them. But if I allow them to be rude to me, that's a boundary issue. If they're going to be skint, that's up to them. But if they want my money, that's an issue. That's a boundary issue. Yeah. They're going to get kicked out of bars because they're drunk. It's up to them. It's blah, blah, blah. And to me, that's how the definitive line comes in between boundary or not boundary. And that's why people get it mixed up with things like, well, look at the way that they stack the dishwasher. Look at the way they stack the clothes. Look at the way they clean the pots. They're not immaculate. It's not really a boundary, So it's, where do you think it gets in people's way the most when they don't have boundaries? And what type of conflicts do you think we have in society from a loss of boundaries?
Well, this is an interesting one because you just mentioned the C word, right? And I think unless you're a sadomasochist, the conflict.
Oh, right. I thought you meant I swore really badly. I was like, did I?
No, leave that to me. No, apologies if I do drop a C-bomb, but there you go. That's probably the only apology you'll get. I don't know why that word offends people. I love that word. We should put adjectives in front of it to make it even more impactful, like you belligerent, and it goes things like that, just to have fun. No, the conflict, the word conflict. I think unless you're a sadomasochistic kind of serial killer, then nobody likes conflict, right? Mm-hmm. But to wear that as a badge or a status symbol or a stigma is a choice, because it's like I talk about awareness, choice, and then stay the same or change, right? So you kind of got like a process of one, awareness, become aware of how you're feeling or how that person is making you feel, become aware of the situation, everything else, right? Become truly present and aware, like you were saying earlier on. That's step one. Mm-hmm. Then when you're aware of stuff, that naturally leads you to choice, which is you have a choice about how you're feeling, what's happening, what you can do next. And that choice leads to 3A and 3B, which is either stay the same or change. Mm-hmm. And I always say, unfortunately, it splits out at 3 because you've got 2 choices effectively when you strip it all back, which is stay the same or change. And I say, so which one scares you the most? And everyone goes change because change is the unknown and it's scary and kind of flight, fright, freeze and all that sort of stuff, and chemicals. So, but then I say to them, okay, so just imagine, Ange, there's a part of your life, like a third of your life that you are incredibly unhappy with. And it's kind of eating you up inside. Imagine if you did nothing about that for the next 15 years. Mm-hmm. Which is scarier, staying the same or change?
I'm all in for self-development, right? So it
Do you know what I mean?
definitely, I know the answer, and I know what I would say, but I also understand why other people would have difficulty with that, because basically something that I always talk about is having good pain and bad pain. Now, the
Yeah.
good pain is when basically you've got a situation, it's going to take bravery, it's going to be uncomfortable, but you take action on something there and then when it's uncomfortable. But with the good pain being long term, it's going to benefit your confidence, it's going to benefit your self-worth, it's going to benefit your own development. But people
Yeah.
more than often opt for the immediate gratification. Oh my God, I'm in conflict, I just want it to go away right now. So the bad pain is when they opt for, I'm not going to do this thing right now because it's too uncomfortable, so I'm just going to avoid it. But the long term is that they stay in this place of having bad pain, like they stay in this place of having that loss, and they don't actually progress moving forward, etc. So I think it's a really, really valid point, but it's just the immediate gratification is more than often what people opt for, because it's just so unfamiliar to take action on it. It's a dream. So many people say, yeah, I want to be confident, I want to be better, I want to self-develop. It's like, okay, you can start now. You can do something tonight that will scare you a little bit, or you'd be growing yourself, or just to take an action on something. There's a million and one reasons why they can't. But what becomes very significant is there are sometimes legitimate reasons why you can't do something right now. Maybe your kid's ill, or maybe, your parents are ill, or whatever. But if you can go through months and months, and actually every single time you have a chat with them, there's a new reason, there's a new experience, there's a new, time. It's to do with tiredness, it's to do with work, it's to do with whatever. You've kind of got your answer that it's much more than all these excuses. It's because they're scared, and it's because the change is harder than just staying with what we know is familiar.
Yeah, exactly. That familiar, right? That comfort blanket, as painful as things can be at times, they're our norm. They're what we're used to. So there's comfort in that normality, despite how much pain. And you only got to look at domestic violence within that. You've only got to look at partners, not specific. It's not exclusive to women, but partners who choose violent partners again and again and again and again, and they keep repeating the cycle because of the comfort factor that's in there, because there's so much of what they know and how to behave in that space. So to answer the question you asked, where does it really come up in people's lives and cause much conflict? I genuinely believe it's because people don't know what they stand for. They don't know what their values are. And I say that from like over 20 years plus of coaching people and developing people in life and in business, in careers, in all sorts, is that when I ask people what their values are, I'll give you a classic one, right? I say, so talk to me, write down your top 3 values. And they go, family. And I go, okay, cool. Well, family is not actually a value. It might be something that you value, but it's not actually a value. So let's explore family for a minute. So what is it you get from being in a family, right? Why do you love it so much? What's important to you about it? So I ask them loads of questions, and they drill down, and they go, well, I don't have to pretend to be somebody else. I can just be me and stuff like that. There's always love there. There's all, I feel at home and stuff like that. All right. So what you're describing is belonging. Now, belonging is a value. Right. And if belonging is important to you, what are you doing in your life that separates you from that value? And as soon as they kind of understand this, they go, oh shit, I'm choosing loads of stuff over there that's isolating me from one of my number one values.
Exactly.
So they're pushing themselves into conflict. They've not created any boundaries because they don't know what's important to them in the first place.
It's why my first call whenever I do a coaching program with somebody is a deep dive in values, for exactly this reason, because I said it basically builds the foundation of what everything else we're going to talk about. It isn't every session is going to be like values, values, values. But if we don't have the foundation in place, how can we build upon it? And if you don't even know what your values are, how do you know what you stand for? Because it isn't about what you do, it's about who you are. And that's another reason, another example of similar to what you've just said, is sometimes people say, I'll ask them what your values are, and they'll say money. And I say, I don't consider money. I say, my immediate question to that is, can you still be an utter arsehole and have loads of money? Which obviously the answer is yes. So money actually isn't the value. It's like, if I could give you £5 million, but you're never allowed to leave your house for the rest of your life, would you take that? Would you choose that as a lifestyle? They're like, well, no. So, okay, so money, technically, you've just got everything that you say is a value to you that's important. Clearly, money isn't actually the thing that's important. It's what you then utilize it for. What does it give you in your life that is important? They'll say, well, stuff like, I like to go on holiday more, and I like to, be able to retire and spend more time with volunteering or something. Okay, so now you're talking about giving to people. You're talking about fun and adventure around traveling. You're talking about doing your hobbies, which might be, I don't know, abseiling or something. I say, so that comes back into, fun and adventure again. So it's what it represents. And it's like a medium to get there that money serves to be, but money isn't actually the value. It's what you do with it and how you then associate with life once you have it, as in whatever situation that you're in. So understanding those differences, otherwise what ends up happening is that if you attach money being that's a value, you get loads and loads of people that work out of integrity for the jobs that they actually want. They do jobs that they hate. They put themselves in situations that actually they might be earning a bucket load of money, but they're frigging miserable whilst doing it. And that's not living by integrity. That's not living powerfully. And that's not living by values. But in their head, they think that they are because they're being driven by the money, which actually isn't a value. It's a medium, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Would you agree
totally.
with that?
Yeah, totally. Like I said, the family one is classic. Belonging's one of them. Love and connections, another one within that family. When you dig down, exactly the same. Money. We're educated again about money in a bad way, in my view, and I'm using the bad way based on how I feel.
Yeah.
Because we're not taught the principle of how money works.
Yep.
We're taught how to get it. We're certainly not taught how to keep it. And I have these conversations with people and I go like, hands up all the spenders in the room. And I like, and they will, some people put their hands up and stuff like that. And I go, hands up all the savers. And then people put their hands up and they've got this like smug look on their face. And I go, so all the savers, just to highlight, congratulations on being a delayed spender. And they're like, I beg your pardon? I'm like, well, what are you saving for? And they're like, oh, well, just in case. I'm like, okay, so there's some just in case people in the savers. What else? What else? Well, I'm saving up for a bigger house. All right, so you're going to go and buy a bigger house. So you're saving money to spend more. So there's only two skills we've got with money, which is spending or investing. But we're not taught how to invest and make money work and do all those kind of things. We're not taught. We're taught how to work really hard and spend it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah.
Well, I think what's very interesting about money, because I have I have a slightly different view. Well, I actually agree with everything you just said, but I also have an additional view to what you've just said.
Yeah.
I agree with people that, they're either a spender or not. There are some people in the middle that they're sensible with, like they put a certain amount away, they spend a certain amount, they still live the life of luxury, but they don't just get it and blow it. And there's other people that don't just squirrel away every penny and, live on 5p beans when they could be eating out and like in a 5-star restaurant kind of thing. But if you look on a deeper level, and this is something that I'm going to be quite open and honest now, but something I had to unpick with my coach as well, is that a lot of people carry shame around money. Now, it's just as bad to be somebody that squirrels your money away as it is as somebody that blows it all, because underneath both of those kind of behaviors is a message of, I don't deserve to have this money. So I'm either not allowed to touch it or I must get rid of it. So on the surface, they look very, very different in terms of, just ridding of not ridding, but like how you manage it basically. But both those behaviors are channeled from the same underlying message of, I'm not worthy of this. So I'm not worthy of spending it. I'm not worthy of having it. And it just comes out in different ways. And I had to do a lot of work with my personal coach to unlock a lot of like money shame, because I'm not saying I'm a multimillionaire. I've done okay for myself. I kind of always have done for whatever reason. But I felt embarrassed about it, or I felt shameful about it. And I was one of those people, I didn't squirrel it away as in like an intense way, but I wasn't a particularly big spender. And I could have definitely afforded more than what I was spending, put it that way. And I didn't even realize it. I just put it down to, I'm being sensible, or I'm being adult, or I'm saving for the future, or I don't have a pension in the same way as other people. So I made all these excuses. But the reality was I was carrying shame around it. And it was the tipping point of like, I now allow myself to be sensible by saving some, but also spending more than I've ever done before. So like if I now want a new garden, I'll get a new garden. If I went out and bought a new camper van, because for years it took me for ages to allow myself that I was actually allowed to have it, rather than it just be something that would be a nice dream. But I carried shame about it and I felt guilt about it. And I had to really spend a lot of deep work to unlock that, to understand where it came from, reshape it, reframe it, and give myself the permission to use the money that I've worked my bloody tits off to earn in a way that makes my life comfortable. But I don't mean that in a braggy way. I'm definitely not coming from a place of arrogance. It's actually something that I'm being open about, that I've had to work on a lot, you know?
Genuinely, thank you for sharing, because you've just hit two words that I think are the biggest killer for human beings, which is guilt and shame. And I think, my experience, my belief is they are intrinsically linked. And I think one sits more comfortably in the feminine, one sits more comfortably in the masculine, because it's like men I know talk about guilt, women I know talk about shame. And it's like men are almost afraid to talk about shame, but there's a masculinity in guilt. And there's this whole kind of conditioned ownership that goes around the two as well. But I totally agree with you. For me, they were the killers. And I've got two successful businesses. I had another business I shut down, and that was great, but I just fell out of love with telecoms and the tech and where it's going. So I shut that down. And I've got two successful businesses, right? And this is a crazy thing. A couple of years ago, I set myself 3 simple goals, and everything gets driven from those 3 simple goals. And I was changing my goals every year. And then I went, well, that's just nuts, because if they're good goals, stick with it, right? Just increase the supporting goals around it and get clear on some of the stuff around it, right? So my 3 goals, and I'll share them with you, are increased revenue, increased time, and increased health, right? Now, they're top line goals, and there's loads of detail underneath these. I shared these in a group recently, and I got slated by the group. A couple of people jumped on straight into judgment. Oh, why do you need more money in this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. Not even questioning what I was doing with it and why. But if you take the two together, I want to increase the time that I've got. I run 2 businesses. So I want to increase the time I've got for my kids, my own health, my relationships. For me, I'm a gamer. I do other things. I read a lot. I need that time for me. Otherwise, I can't serve as well as I. So I need to increase the time I've got for my 2 businesses while not decreasing the revenue. And that was my first thought. And I was like, well, why am I accepting that? And then I was like, well, okay, well, I need the revenue to stay the same if I'm taking more time back. And I was like, why am I accepting that? No, I need my revenue to increase and the time out of my business to increase, because now I've got to leverage my business differently. I've got to bring systems and people and processes in differently. I've got to be able to walk away from this for a longer period of time and it still function better. Because when I built this business larger years ago, I kind of built a Frankenstein, right, through my own mistakes. So I had to strip it back to a smaller business with just the 3 of us, and then we're growing it again, right? But in a different way, because I don't want to get back to what I was. And I didn't realize at the time it was all driven by guilt. And then when I started to focus on those goals of increasing the time I'm taking away from my businesses, so changing the way I operated, changing the way my client, and everyone fell in line, everyone supported it. And I'm grateful for my clients and the way that we work and they understand it. And you get this, you're not an email slave, right? So you get some of these things in terms of changing the actual habits and the disciplines to deliver on these goals, right? And I'm sitting there with one of my businesses effectively taking Monday and Tuesday. My other business takes one of those other remaining 3 days, which that is a level of success that a lot of people aspire to. Believe me, I don't aspire to a yellow Lamborghini, so that doesn't look like success for me, right? Because bellends drive yellow Lamborghinis in my view, but that's
I'll pass on the judgment on that one. I'll leave you to it.
Everyone has a different view, right? So but the point being is that I had the opportunity to bring on some really big clients, and my brain went, yeah, that's brilliant. I got loads of space on those other 3 days. I'll do that. And I didn't realize how much of that was driven by guilt, because I'm sitting there thinking, I can't not do something.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not busy, I'm not successful. And if I'm not busy and not successful, what am I doing this for? Oh my God, it's all going to go away. I'm going to lose all everything I've ever worked for. Oh my God, my kids are going to be out in the streets. Blah, blah. All those kind of little voices that just go crazy up there for a tiny little part of my head in a day can sometimes set the entire day. And it's catching those, being aware of it and reprogramming it and going, hang on a sec. So guilt and shame held me in that space, in that cycle of stunted growth for a very, very long time. And it wasn't until I tackled those babies, and it's not I'm fixed. They are constantly coming back. Yeah, and it's having the strength and the self-resilience to recognize and go, hang on a fucking sec, not again.
Yeah.
No, so
and also with 2 things I want to add to that. Firstly, Brene Brown actually talks about shame and guilt and the difference. And guilt is normally, as she words it, around I have done something wrong. Like I have made a mistake. I've made this thing wrong. Where shame is I am wrong. It's more like a labeling. It's like it's an internalized, this is kind of who I am. So that's just one observation I just wanted to share. But secondly, when you're in a place of these are my ideas, I want to work, kind of reflecting what you said, I don't know, 3-4 days a week, whatever. I want to have long weekends. I want to travel the world. I want to run my business from abroad, blah, blah, blah. And I want to earn X amount of money. If they're your goals, but then you get people that jump in going, no, you can't have that. That's shameful, or you shouldn't do it that way, or what gives you the right to do it that way, whatever the kind of shit that people come out with. It's really interesting because back to boundaries again, because this has been more like a self-development stroke boundaries conversation, but back to boundaries again, it takes the ability to withhold that type of boundary, because if you don't have those clear boundaries of what you're allowed to choose, what is right for you and what's actually relevant, what other people think, it'd be very easy to absorb that other person's shame and go, oh, should I do it differently? Particularly if you've already got a bit of a nagging negative little chatter in your head as well. So if somebody else starts challenging you saying, you shouldn't do it that way, Adam, it's like, actually, yes, I can. And I am going to. And so many people, if they didn't have that boundary and self-worth and confidence, would be very easily derailed on that and end up working 12 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's the conditioned way of success, right? 2.4 children, Sierra on the drive, right?
And external validation, though, that's the bit I'm getting at.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
The big need, because they haven't got the strength of the internal validation, the big need for it. And that again, I think that comes with the baby boomers and that whole generation of seeking that external validation. We are much more the young, and I see my kids coming through. It's like they're not seeking that external validation in the same way. There's a very different generation coming through. That,
to be fair, though, you're the dad. You've got 4 kids, haven't you? Is that right?
Yeah. Between our extent, me and my partner's family.
So like I imagine your kids, and I say this with a compliment, really, your kids are going to have a very different experience from a lot of other kids out there, because I have so many emails from parents now, and I don't work with children, and as you know, but I get so many parents that message me saying, my 14-year-old is riddled in anxiety. My 14-year-old has got suicidal thoughts. My 15-year-old is depressed. The doctors put them on antidepressants. Is there anything you can do? They've got no confidence, no self-esteem. And I think it has been actually drilled into our society to almost condition people to believe that actually I will measure myself at the mercy of what you think of me, which is why social media has been so rife in younger people, and God forbid what it must have been like for them, because I would have struggled with it when I was 15 to be on Facebook or whatever. But even down to, I've made a post, how many likes do I get? I've made another post, and my mate made a post and they got 400 likes and I got 100. Why does everybody like them? I'm not cool enough. I'm going to take this thing down. And everything that we measure about what we're doing is even to the most subtle ways of doing it about external validation. And I believe that the only way you can break that cycle is if you're being raised by a parent that really gets it. If you're being raised by a parent that's lived in the external validation and people-pleasing world themselves, the kids are going to be like that. But it's even worse now than it used to be, because we've got tools like social media, for example. So I think, it's a backhanded compliment. I think your kids are very fortunate to have a parent, I don't know your ex-wife, whatever, but to have a parent that is so focused on actually enabling them to build their own self-esteem, as opposed to, do that thing over there, because that's what everybody else wants you to do and you'll be more rewarded for it. That's not holding a boundary.
And it's that, I can't remember whether you were in the room when Jamie was in the room as well, but he talks similar language at different times. And one of the things he shared, and I lived by this for years, right? My daughter, she comes down the stairs and stuff like that. I'll tell her she's beautiful, right? Not because I want her to grow up like a princess, but I don't want her to reach a 16-year-old and a boy tell her she's beautiful and she falls for it. I want her to know that she's beautiful inside and out. Sure. And when somebody says she's beautiful, she's like, okay, cool, thanks. Anyway, what else you got in there? Yeah, do you know what I mean? What else you got in the tank? Because
what else am I, Dad? Tell me more.
Yeah. Because she's not kind of just swept up by because I know what boys are like at 16. I was one, right? So, they say you're given a daughter because you're being punished for your early teenage years. Maybe, but when my daughter turned 10, it kind of, the moment clicked and I was like, it's going to take a strong boy to kind of, and I am proud of that, because she is strong in her own skin. And, without going into too much detail, over the secondary school, she's in secondary school now, and she had some challenge with some girls being nasty and bitchy and bullying and all this sort of stuff. And, at times I'm pretty sure my kids don't like having a coach as a dad, but there are times when they're sitting there going, I don't know what to do, and I'm going, yeah, you do. We just need to figure it out. So let's figure it out. Let's go there. Yeah, because I'm unafraid to go there, and it's like tears, tantrums, whatever it brings, we'll find a way through this, because in there is the strength.
And underneath all of that external stuff and all that tears and tantrums, perfectly normal, but it is part of our ego protecting us, which is, a lot of people see a bad thing with the ego. We've all got an ego and it's there to protect us. Not many people realize that. But underneath all of that is this little soldier within us going, this is what I need to do for me to stand in my own power. And this is what I need to do to hold this boundary. And this is what I need to do. But it's going to be bloody scary doing it, because it probably means I'm going to have to, I don't know, stand up in front of 4 people and speak my mind, whatever. It might mean that I get isolated from the group. It might mean that I get ostracized from the school. It might mean that I lose some reputation for it. But if nothing else, put your own integrity and put your own self-worth at the top of that list every single time. And I'm willing to lose other things as a side effect, because I've lived the alternative life where I've compromised on who I am. I've compromised on what I want. And in order to get something that I actually don't want. And it's so damaging for your self-esteem that now I've done it the other way around. I can't go backwards, and I'm willing to lose things in order to keep at the top of my list of importance, my self-worth and boundaries.
Yeah. See, this is a really interesting one, because if you think about inoculation as a term, right? And again, as a coach, how many times can we fall into the habit of going, no, don't do that because this will happen, because you've got lots of experience to say, but I can't say that to somebody because they're not me. That happened to me with that situation. It doesn't mean it's going to happen to them, right? So it's hard to stand back and go, okay, have you considered all the risks and stuff like that? You might fall over, tie your shoelaces because you might fall over kind of scenario, but they have to fall over sometimes and graze their knee before they realize the importance of tying the shoelaces themselves. And if you kind of fast track the lesson isn't learned in the way it needs to be and stuff. So this inoculation thing, in terms of emotionally inoculating, because if I sat there and waited till my daughter went to secondary school and she comes home and she says, I'm being bullied, and I sit and go, yeah, told you so, that's bound to happen. It's right, it's not you, blah, blah. By the time she's plucked up the courage to have that conversation with me, the damage is already done. Because how long has she spent blaming herself, losing her self-worth, even more, going, emotionally going through the floor, because no one's actually prepared her for the fact that this will happen. So part of my role as a parent is to show them warts and all of life and give them an understanding. So when I talk about living unapologetically, I've had conversations with my kids from a very young age about the word sorry and about their use of the word sorry, to help them understand that who is it affecting when they say sorry, right? Because if you really, really dig down, you're apologizing for something that you've said or done. So if you've said and done something as a one-off, then a sorry can go so far. But if you keep choosing to do the same thing, an apology only excuses you, makes no difference to me. So it's about a guilt thing again. We're saying sorry to ease our own guilt for the behavior or the action that we took. Let's look at the behavior and the action that we're taking. Let's do something about that, and we can actually eradicate the need for sorry. So this is about emotional inoculation before things happen. So they've got something, because we'll never stop bullying. We will never stop bullying in the workplace, in friends and stuff, and things will always be labeled as banter. I don't care what you say about it. It's never going to change, unfortunately. So what we can do about it is give people the life skills, the self-worth, and the resilience, and the expectation, the awareness that it's coming and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because forewarned is forearmed, right?
Sure. Very similar thing to what you're saying around apologizing to somebody, that you don't actually feel sorry for what you've said or done, but you're doing it just to keep the peace. So you've basically just said, I'm going to compromise on what I stand for in order to please you, so we can be friends, so you can like me again. So it comes back down to boundaries. It comes back down to people pleasing. And basically people pleasing is a loss of boundaries. And it's that need for that external validation, which is all connected. But whenever we do anything that we really, really, really don't want to do, but we're doing it we're compromising on ourselves to be accepted more, to be liked more, which is what I think our society is riddled with. We basically just say to ourselves that I'm not worth it. I don't really matter. What I think and feel is less important what you think and feel and what the rest of the world thinks.
Surrendering yourself to other external
100%.
sources.
And it's so damaging. It's so damaging. So It can be any topic.
There's a brilliant subject called on this space around boundaries and stuff. And in fact, there's a fantastic book. There's a book called I'm Okay, You're Okay.
Read that.
Listen, and I think it's incredible, right? And when it talks about that simple quadrant of I'm okay, you're not okay. You're okay, I'm not okay. I'm not okay, you're not okay. Or I'm okay and you're okay, right? And it's like, how do we work on that space? And that's about transactional analysis. And it's like, when you get into transactional analysis, and I know you will have, and this is
my mum's a TA therapist.
Right.
She was.
Do you know what I mean?
Retired
there
now.
You go. So as a parent, right, and I'm looking at going, when you look at the parent-child adult scenario, wherever there is a child response or a child behavior, you will get a parent response. Wherever there is a parent behavior, you will get a child response. So how do we encourage that adult? And I remember right from the age my daughter was born, my first child, I never wanted to do the gaga goo goo bollocks. And I would always talk in context, and I would come down, and sort of crouch down to a similar eye level and all that sort of stuff, and engage and be on the floor with them. But I would not shy away from conversations of things, but do it in an adult way, not in a babyish way or a childish way or a condescending way or anything like that. And I also think that's played a massive part on the confidence and the independence of my two. Now, my boy is very, very sensitive. And he's strong, right? But he wouldn't hurt a fly. And the feeling or the thinking of hurting anything living absolutely crucifies him. But he could pick up probably most of those kids and snap them in half if he was being bullied. Do you know what I mean? That's not in his nature. But and I am extremely proud of them both. But we're still, 10 and 15. We still got a lot of life to navigate and lots of rocks to avoid. And if I can be their lighthouse, that's all I try and be.
Amazing. So I'm just very conscious of the time. So what are your final thoughts around self-development, self-worth, boundaries? What are your final thoughts for anybody listening to this?
Okay, so I would suggest more than anything, study a little bit of Confucius, pick up the Andalex. Because if we want to really understand about our outcomes and what we've got in our life and happiness, it's always the simple stuff. So values, habits, and disciplines. If we individually spend a bit of time understanding our own values, habits, and disciplines, we can create a happier life right now. I'm happy to have conversations and debate and offer support to anyone that wants to have those kind of conversations. Because if people are struggling with this, let's kind of get a momentum going and do some things, Ange, because I've loved the conversation. So let's do more of it. Right?
Well, hopefully there's some people up. Yeah, hopefully people have watched this and just picked up some nice little truth bombs in here as well, just around the way that they hold themselves, what actually boundaries are, how we develop ourselves just generally just in terms of growth and that continuation of growth as well. Nobody is the finished product. As I put on a lot of my content, as you probably see on LinkedIn and all my social media channels, never, ever do I ever say this is a journey that we finish. Like there's no finish line. And where I was 2 years ago, I was like, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, but I'd be feeling stale and bored if I was still the same person I was 2 years ago. So I feel better now. And another 2 years, I'll feel better again. It's an ongoing journey. We never really stop. It's always like, what's next? But in a way that it isn't about trying to be better than other people. It's just like, who can I be? How can I get the best out of my time on this planet as who I am? And that's a never ending journey. And that's why I love self-development, because it's exciting because you never stop. So you
just hit a brilliant point. And there's a life formula I came across years ago, which is be multiplied by do equals have.
Say that again.
Be multiplied by do equals have. Right.
Okay,
so
sure.
B times do equals have.
Yeah.
And it's like, because everyone's focusing about the do, or what do I need to do more? I need to do more. I need to do more. And if you go back to bloody Isaac Newton's laws of physics, right? And if you've got a heavy object, it needs to move from point A to point B. If you apply pressure to it, you push it from point A to, it will go in that linear way, right? And that's the do. People's thinking is always linear in that I got to do more.
Sure, agreed.
But if you just go in a different direction and go, well, who can I be? Who do I need to be to achieve those goals? Who do I need to become to be that parent, that friend, that lover, that partner, that business owner? Who do I need to be? Not what do I need to do? And if we focus more on the be and we kind of vibrate that level out, then you add in a bit of do, see what happens.
Totally agree. It reminds me, just to wrap up, is something that Tony Robbins said. He said, if you're looking for the love of your life, kind of going off topic here, but it is very related. If you're looking for the love of your life, go out and write down a list of all the things that you want in that partner, and next to go and be that person. Yeah. I was like, yes, that makes so much sense. Tony's always one for like these little one-liners. So just quickly, Adam, how can anybody find you in terms of if they want to contact you?
So easy enough. Sales Academy, UK Sales Academy, Facebook, Instagram. The only thing is, don't email me. You know, I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy. I got a phone. You can share my mobile number with people if you want to when you share this around. I'm happy for you to do that, because if people WhatsApp me in instant messages, when people need help and support, they kind of need it instantly. And I'll check my emails once a week. Do you know what I mean? So, but I'm all over social.
Blimey, you're worse than me, and I thought I was bad.
Yeah, no. Well, I always claim emails are everybody else's to-do list. That's what emails are. They're people emailing, asking you to do something for them. So they can wait. If it's important, they'll phone you.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you very much. And just for myself, if you ever want to contact me, I can be reached on my website, angiemcquillin.com, through Facebook, through Instagram, and through my main presence is on LinkedIn, all just under my name. So I'm not difficult to find. But once again, Adam, thank you very much for coming. It's been a pleasure. And maybe we'll do another one sometime.
Yeah, it'd be great. I'd love to.
Okay, cheers then. Bye-bye.